My girlfriend of 13 years left me because of her friend's toxic advice, but when they both came begging, I had already destroyed them and showed them who they really were. I'm 28 years old. I live in a small town in the Midwest, and I own my own plumbing business that I built from scratch, basically with my own hands and a ton of sleepless nights. I guess I should be proud of that. And I am. But the truth is, I need to tell this story because what happened about a year and a half ago left me so destroyed that I thought I'd never get out of it. I'm talking about my relationship with Penelope, the girl I was with since high school, literally since we were 15 years old, and how everything went to hell because of her coworker Heather, who turned out to be one of the most manipulative and toxic people I've ever met in my life. But anyway, I'm going to start from the beginning because if I don't, none of this is going to make sense. I met Penelope in sophomore year of high school, you know? It was in one of those boring history classes where the teacher would talk and nobody paid attention. She sat next to me one day because her friend was absent or, something. And we started talking. First about silly stuff, music, movies, the usual. I remember she made me laugh a lot that day. And when the bell rang for lunch, I asked her if she wanted to sit with me. And she said yes. That's how simple it all started. Within a few weeks, we were officially boyfriend and girlfriend, with all those teenage cheesy things and everything. And honestly, I thought she was the most amazing girl in the world. She was smart, ambitious, had plans for her life, and I was completely crazy about her. The high school years flew by, honestly. We went everywhere together, our families knew each other, we spent weekends together, all that stuff. When we graduated, I knew I didn't want to go to college. It wasn't my thing, but Penelope did want to. She had this dream of working in the publishing world, in publications and all that. I supported her completely. Obviously, because I loved her and wanted her to achieve her goals. While she went to college, like an hour from where we lived, I started working with a local plumber, an older man who taught me everything I know about the trade. It was hard work, dirty, a lot of times, but I liked it. I liked fixing things, solving problems, and the pay wasn't bad. During the 4 years Penelope was in college, I worked like crazy. Literally. Not only was I learning the trade, but I was also saving everything I could because I had this plan, to eventually open my own business. Penelope would come home on weekends or I'd go visit her, and although the distance was difficult sometimes, it was never a real problem between us. I helped her with what I could, sometimes with money for books or so she wouldn't have to work as much and could concentrate on her studies, and she always told me that I was her rock, that she couldn't have done it without me, and that made me feel good. It made me feel like we were building something together, a future, you know what I mean? When Penelope graduated, like 6 years ago now, it was one of the happiest days of my life. I went to her graduation ceremony with her family. I saw her cross that stage and receive her diploma, and honestly, I felt so proud of her that I almost cried right there. By then, I had already started my business. I had gotten a small loan, bought a used truck and some tools, and had like 3 or 4 regular clients. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Penelope came back to our town after graduating and started looking for work, which was harder than we thought because in a small town there aren't many opportunities in publishing. So she had to look in the nearest city, which was like 40 minutes away. After a few months of searching, Penelope finally got a job at a publishing house that published local magazines and some books. She was super excited. It was her first real job in her field, and I was happy for her, even though it meant she was going to have to drive to the city every day. It wasn't ideal, but it was what there was, and she loved that job from the beginning. She talked to me all the time about her projects, about the authors she worked with, about the ideas she had, and I listened even though honestly I didn't understand much about that world, but I loved seeing her so passionate about what she did. It was at that job where she met Heather. At first, Penelope talked about her like any other coworker, casual comments about what they did at work that day, that they went to lunch together, that kind of thing. Heather was like 2 or 3 years older than us, worked in the same department as Penelope, and according to what Penelope told me, she seemed normal, friendly, nothing out of the ordinary. I never met her in person in those first months. Penelope hadn't invited her to hang out with us or anything, but it didn't seem weird to me either because Penelope had always been one to keep her work life and personal life separate. Things started to change like 6 months after. Penelope started that job. It was gradual. So gradual that at first I didn't even realize something was happening. Penelope started mentioning Heather more often. Not just work stuff, but now they were going to lunch together almost every day. And then they started going out after work too, sometimes for drinks or dinner. I didn't have a problem with that. It seemed fine to me that she had a friend at work, someone she could talk to about things I didn't understand much. But then Penelope started getting home later. And when I asked her how her day was, she always told me, "Oh, I was with Heather. We went to such and such place, or did such and such thing." I think the first time I really started to feel like something was wrong was when Penelope casually mentioned that Heather had told her that I didn't seem very ambitious. We were having dinner at my apartment. I had cooked pasta with that sauce she liked, and out of nowhere she drops on me. Heather says, "You should think about expanding your business faster, that at your age you should already have employees and more clients." I was like, what? Because first, Heather didn't know me, I'd never talked to her, and second, my business was doing well. It was growing at a healthy and sustainable pace. I didn't need advice from someone who knew nothing about what I did. I told Penelope that it seemed weird to me that Heather was giving opinions about my life when she didn't even know me. And Penelope got defensive immediately, saying that Heather was just trying to help, that she had experience in business because her family had a business or something. I don't remember exactly. After that conversation, I started noticing more comments from Heather that Penelope repeated. That I should dress better, that I should be more social, that I should have more ambitions in life beyond being a plumber. And every time Penelope said these things, I got angrier. Not with her necessarily, but with this Heather who was clearly meddling, where she wasn't called. I'd tell Penelope, "Why are you telling Heather such personal things about our relationship?" And she'd tell me that Heather was her friend, that it was normal to talk with friends about these things. And I guess so. But something felt wrong, you know? Like Heather was deliberately trying to cause problems between us. Things kept getting worse over time. Penelope started canceling plans with me more often, saying that Heather had invited her to such and such event or that they had to work late on some project. We started fighting more, stupid fights about things that didn't used to matter to us, and I could see that many of those fights started because Penelope was repeating things that clearly Heather had told her. It was like Heather was in my relationship, like an invisible third person who was constantly criticizing me, questioning me, making Penelope doubt me and what we had. I tried to talk to Penelope seriously about this like 1,000 times. Like, I told her that I felt Heather had too much influence over her, that we needed to focus on us and not on what other people thought. But Penelope always denied it. She told me I was being paranoid, that Heather only wanted what was best for her, that I should be grateful that she had a friend who cared so much. I didn't know what else to do, honestly. I loved Penelope. We'd been together for almost 10 years at that point, and I didn't want to lose her. But I also felt like I was losing her anyway. Little by little, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. Despite all this, I was still planning to propose to her. I know it sounds crazy considering everything that was happening, but I thought that maybe if we got engaged, if she saw that I was totally committed to our future together, things would get better, you know? I'd been saving for months to buy a ring. Not something super expensive because I couldn't afford that, but something nice, something she deserved. I even went to a jeweler and designed a custom ring with her favorite stone, an amethyst, because she always said she liked it better than diamonds. I planned everything for our anniversary dinner, which was in December. I reserved a table at her favorite restaurant in the city, that Italian place she always said was her special place, and I had the ring in my pocket. I was nervous, but also excited, like I thought this was the answer, that after this everything was going to be okay between us again. Penelope arrived at dinner, and honestly, I should have noticed it from the beginning, but I was so focused on my plan that I didn't pay attention to the signs. She was distant, barely looked me in the eyes, played with her food more than she ate. When dessert time came, when I was going to take out the ring and ask her the question, she interrupted me before I could say anything. She told me, "Alexander, we need to talk," with that serious voice that never brings anything good, you know? My heart sank immediately. She started talking, saying that she'd been thinking a lot about our relationship, about our future, and that she wasn't sure we were compatible long term. I froze, literally couldn't process what I was hearing. I asked her what she meant, and she kept talking, basically repeating everything Heather had been telling her for months, that I wasn't ambitious enough, that she needed to be with someone who had bigger goals, that she had changed and grown and I hadn't. I asked her directly if Heather had anything to do with this, and she didn't deny it. She just said that Heather had helped her see things clearly, that Heather had made her realize she deserved more. I couldn't believe it. We were sitting there in that restaurant and she was leaving me, after 10 years together, because her toxic coworker had basically brainwashed her. I tried to reason with her. I reminded her of everything we'd been through together, how I'd supported her through college, how we'd built this life together, but she just shook her head and said she was sorry, that she'd made her decision. I left that restaurant in total shock, with the ring still in my pocket, feeling like the biggest idiot in the world. I drove home without even remembering the route, and when I got there I threw myself on the couch and just stayed there, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what had just happened. I didn't cry that night. I think I was too shocked to cry. I just felt this huge emptiness in my chest, like something vital had been ripped out of me. What happened next was what really destroyed me. That same night, like 3 hours after we broke up, I was checking Instagram without thinking much, just to distract myself, and I saw a story from Heather. It was Penelope at some party, laughing, with a drink in her hand, and there was a guy next to her, very close to her, with his arm around her waist. The description of the story said something like, "Celebrating new beginnings," with a heart emoji. I just stared at that image, I don't know how long, feeling the rage starting to replace the shock. Celebrating, really? She'd just left me like 3 hours ago and she was already at a party with another guy, and Heather was there, documenting it all like it was some kind of victory. Penelope called me like 10 minutes after I saw that story. Probably someone told her I'd seen it. She was crying, saying she was sorry, that it wasn't what it looked like, that Heather had convinced her to go to that party to distract herself. I told her, "Distract yourself from what exactly? You just broke up with me. What do you need to forget?" She kept crying and apologizing, and I just told her I never wanted to talk to her again, that it was clear she'd already moved on before even ending our relationship. I blocked her from everything. Phone, social media, everything. I needed her out of my life completely, because every time I thought about her, I just felt this mixture of pain and rage that was consuming me. The next few months were probably the darkest of my life. I focused completely on my work. I worked 12, 14 hours a day, anything not to have to think about Penelope or what had happened. My friends tried to get me out, to make me socialize, but I didn't want to. I just wanted to work and sleep and repeat. My business actually grew quite a bit during that time. Ironic, considering one of the reasons Penelope left me was because supposedly I wasn't ambitious enough. I hired 2 employees, expanded my services, got bigger contracts, but none of that made me feel better, because the person I wanted to share those successes with was no longer there. Like 5 months after the breakup, I had to have surgery. Nothing serious. It was something with my knee that I'd been putting off for years and finally decided to do. It was basically outpatient surgery. They were going to put me under. They were going to fix what was wrong, and I was going home the same day. I'd asked my brother to pick me up afterwards because I needed someone to drive me home. But he had an emergency at the last minute and couldn't go. The hospital said it was no problem, that they could call someone else from my emergency contact list. When I woke up from the anesthesia, still half groggy and confused, the first thing I saw was someone sitting in the chair next to my bed. My vision was blurry, and I thought it was my brother or some friend, but when I focused properly, I realized it was Heather. I'd never seen her in person before that moment, only in Penelope's Instagram photos, but I recognized her immediately. I was like, "What the hell?" trying to understand what she was doing there. She smiled at me and said, "Hi, Alexander. I know this is weird, but Penelope still had you as an emergency contact on her phone, and when the hospital called, she was working, so she asked me to come instead." Even in my confused post-anesthesia state, I knew that didn't make any sense. Why would the hospital call Penelope if I wasn't with her anymore? And why would Heather agree to come in her place? But I was too tired and dizzy to argue, so I just nodded and closed my eyes. Heather stayed there with me until I was discharged, helped me get dressed, which was super awkward, and took me to her car. On the way to my house, she started talking. saying things like she was so sorry about what had happened between Penelope and me, that she never meant to cause problems, that she was just trying to help her friend see things clearly. I listened to her but didn't say anything, still processing the fact that she was there, in her car, taking me home. When we got to my apartment, she insisted on helping me up, said I shouldn't be alone after surgery. What if I fell or needed something? I was too tired to fight, so I let her in. She helped me lie down on the couch, brought me water, put my medications on the table, and then sat on the chair across from me. She started talking again. Now, about herself, about her job, about how hard it was to find good men these days, and I just wanted her to leave, but I also didn't have the energy to ask her to leave. It was at that moment, half asleep on my couch, listening to her talk, that I started to understand what had really happened. Heather hadn't sabotaged my relationship with Penelope just because she was an overprotective friend or because she genuinely thought I wasn't enough for Penelope. She'd done it because she wanted me for herself. Everything started to fit together. The constant comments about me, the way she always found ways to sow discord between Penelope and me, in the party that night, with the other guy who was probably a setup, so I'd see the story. Heather had manipulated the entire situation to destroy my relationship and position herself as the better option, more understanding, the one who really got me. I realized this, and honestly, I don't know what came over me, whether it was the anesthesia, the pain, the accumulated rage of months. But I decided at that moment that I was going to play her game. If Heather wanted to manipulate, I could manipulate too. I sat up a little on the couch and told her that I really appreciated her coming, that honestly, I'd felt very lonely since Penelope left me, that it was good to have someone there. I saw how her eyes lit up when I said that, and I knew I was right. She'd orchestrated all of this. Over the next few weeks, Heather started appearing more in my life. She'd send me messages asking how my knee was, if I needed anything, and I always responded, being kind, grateful. She started inviting me out, first to casual things like getting coffee, then to dinner, and I accepted every invitation. I started flirting with her, subtly at first, and she responded enthusiastically, clearly thinking her plan was working. In my head, I had my own plan forming. I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do, but I knew I wanted her to feel even a fraction of the pain I'd felt. After like a month of this, Heather and I slept together. It was at her apartment. After a dinner where she'd had like 3 glasses of wine and was being super flirty and direct. I acted like I was super interested in her, like she was exactly what I needed after Penelope. That night, she told me, "You know, I always thought you were too good for Penelope, that she didn't appreciate you like she should." I just nodded and continued with what we were doing, even though inside I felt disgusted, not by the act itself, but by how fake it all was, by how manipulative she was and by how manipulative I was becoming. After that night, Heather assumed we were something. She started sending me messages constantly, photos, long voice messages talking about her day, plans for the future. I responded enough to keep her interested, but I started distancing myself, canceling plans, being less available. She got more and more desperate. The messages became more frequent and more intense, asking me if she'd done something wrong, telling me she thought we had something special, that she understood me better than anyone. This went on for like 2 weeks, me ignoring most of her messages, leaving her on read on purpose, and her sending me more and more desperate messages. I had like 50 unanswered messages from her. Some were pathetic, others angry, some where she begged me to explain what had happened. And that's when I executed my plan. I took screenshots of absolutely all the messages Heather had sent me from the beginning, especially the most recent ones where she looked desperate and obsessed, and I sent them all to Penelope. I didn't write anything else. I just sent her all the screenshots in sequence so she could see exactly how Heather had been acting, how she'd been chasing me, how she'd admitted that she'd always thought I was too good for Penelope. I blocked Heather from everything before sending those messages because I knew that when Penelope confronted her, Heather was going to try to contact me. I didn't want to know anything more about either of them at that point. I just wanted them to see the consequences of their actions. What happened next was told to me by a friend who knew someone who worked at that same publishing house. Apparently, Penelope confronted Heather in the middle of the office the next day, yelling at her, calling her everything, saying that she had destroyed her relationship on purpose to keep me for herself. Heather tried to deny it at first, but there was too much evidence, all those messages I had sent. The thing escalated so much that they grabbed each other physically, like Penelope threw coffee on her and Heather pushed her, and they both ended up being escorted out of the building by security. They were both fired on the spot for inappropriate conduct in the workplace. Like 2 days after that, Penelope showed up at my door. It was nighttime, like 9 or 10, and I was watching TV when I heard knocking. I opened the door and there she was. She looked terrible, eyes red and swollen from crying, hair disheveled. She started talking immediately, saying she was so sorry, that she'd been an idiot, that Heather had brainwashed her, that she should never have left me. She told me that now she understood everything, that Heather had been manipulating her from the beginning, that she really loved me and wanted us to get back together. I let her talk. I listened to her say everything she had to say, and when she finished, I just told her no. I told her that she'd had months to realize what Heather was doing, that I'd warned her 1,000 times that Heather was causing problems, but she didn't listen to me, that she chose to believe someone she barely knew instead of believing me, her partner of 10 years. I told her that she'd completely broken me when she left me, that the fact that she now wanted to come back only because she discovered Heather's betrayal didn't change anything, that the damage was already done, she cried. She begged me, but I didn't change my mind. I closed the door, and that was the last time I talked to Penelope. The next day, Heather also showed up, also wanting to talk, saying that it had all been a misunderstanding, that I had misinterpreted her intentions. I didn't even let her in. I just told her through the door to leave and never come back. I heard her stay there like 10 minutes, knocking and calling me, but eventually she left. It's been like 8 months since all that. My business is better than ever. I hired 2 more employees. I have a waiting list of clients, and I was finally able to move into a small house I bought last month. I started dating someone a few months ago. Her name is Maya. I met her when I went to fix the pipes in her apartment. She's an elementary school teacher, super sweet and genuine, and the best thing is that she values what I do. She doesn't try to change me or make me feel like I'm not enough. It's refreshing to be with someone who appreciates you for who you are. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing with that whole revenge plan with Heather. On one hand, I feel a little bad, because in the end, they both lost their jobs and probably their reputations in that industry. But on the other hand, I think they caused their own destruction. I just showed them both who they really were, and the consequences of their actions aren't my responsibility. I know there are probably people who think I went too far, that I should have been the bigger person and just moved on. But honestly, after everything I went through, after how they treated me, I don't regret anything. They played stupid games and won stupid prizes, as they say. The only thing I know for sure is that I don't want to know anything about drama, manipulation, toxic people anymore. Maya and I are going slow, building something real based on respect and honesty, and that's all I need right now. My business is thriving. I have good people in my life, and I finally feel like I'm in a place where I can be happy again. It was a long and painful road to get here, but I guess sometimes you have to go through hell to really appreciate when things are good.